Oscar's title bid continued to collapse in Brazil as Lando Norris has now took a commanding lead of this championship with back-to-back wins and now a 24-point gap to Oscar. If Lando continues on his current trajectory, then there is a chance that Max will be out of the title fight after Las Vegas and that he might be able to wrap this up and win the championship in Qatar without even a last race decider. Oscar hasn't just lost the lead of this title, but he has well and truly lost the momentum with yet another messy weekend that in part was another example of the pressure that he is under, but also down to some bad luck with an incident that I don't think was his fault. In terms of the sprint, yet again Oscar crashed out, handing Lando another 8 points before we'd even got to the Grand Prix. Whilst there is always an element of luck in those conditions, it was yet another driver error as he took a little bit too much curb, hitting a patch of water on the white line, which caused him to crash into the barriers. The irony is that Lando on that exact same lap actually took even more curb and was fine, but for Oscar, if something can go wrong, then it definitely has over the past few races, and that continued in the race with a very costly and controversial incident that lost him points. And now, before I give my analysis of that incident, I actually want to play Charles Leclerc's interview after he was taken out. The reason for this is because Leclerc sums up exactly how I feel about the incident, and in particular, look at his reaction when he is told that Oscar was handed a 10-second penalty for it.
Look back at the incident, Oscar took the penalty. Do you understand in the championship position he's in why he made such an aggressive move?
Oscar was optimistic, but Kimi knew that Oscar was on the inside, I think, and he kind of did the corner like Oscar was never there. And the blame is not all on us, Oscar. Yes, it was optimistic, but this could have been avoided. And I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's all Oscar's fault. I don't think it is.
As I said, Leclerc took the words right out of my mouth because whilst my immediate reaction watching it live was that, oh, it was definitely Oscar's fault, looking back at all of the replays, to me it was more of a racing incident with one driver being a little bit too optimistic and the other driver not giving any space to a car that was on his inside. The first thing that I want to talk about is the notion that Oscar was out of control. And now, yes, he was locked up, but if you look at his trajectory, he actually hugs the white line throughout the entire corner. He is also able to make the apex and even steer onto the curb, which means that even though yes, he is locked up, he is still in full control of his car. If he was locked up and going straight through the corner when it turns left, then that would be him out of control, but he doesn't. The lockup is almost a red herring because if you just ignore the lockup and focus solely on the trajectory of the car, he is actually turning into the corner the entire time and reacting to how much Kimi is squeezing him, and he is just following the white line exactly as you would normally. My frustration is that by the letter of the law and according to the racing guidelines, which once again to emphasize are guidelines and not technically the regulations, for someone overtaking on the inside to be given room, they must have their front axle alongside the other car's wing mirror. And now, whilst Oscar didn't do that during the braking phase, technically he did get alongside Kimi way before the corner when they were already on the main straight, at which point Kimi knew that he had two cars on either side of him. This is exactly what Leclerc pointed out, and why in anticipation, he left Kimi a huge amount of room on Kimi's right hand side to allow him to leave a car's width on the inside, expecting that Piastri was still going to be there. Instead, what happened is that Kimi broke later and got his nose ahead of Oscar, but he then just followed Lando's line going into that corner, ignoring the fact that there is someone on his inside, despite the fact that he knew going into that corner that he was 3 wide. And now, by no means am I saying that Kimi Antonelli deserved a penalty, and I want to make that very clear, because to me there is fault on both sides, and no one is predominantly at fault. But given that Kimi got caught out at the restart with a little bit of wheel spin, given that Oscar was already alongside Kimi down the main straight and in full control of his car when Kimi started to squeeze him, I think Oscar earned more space on the inside that Kimi chose not to give him. I also think the fact that Leclerc got taken out almost made the stewards want to give someone a penalty to serve some kind of justice. But sometimes innocent drivers, unfortunately, are going to DNF as a result of a racing incident. There isn't always someone that has to be at fault, and to me especially giving Oscar a 10-second penalty, not even a 5-second when you take into consideration that Kimi also had a part to play in it, was way over the top by the stewards, and it probably cost Oscar second place on the podium, looking at how close he was running to Lando after the incident. And now I want to give a huge amount of credit to Lando Norris because whilst a lot of the focus after this weekend will be on Oscar and even Max, what Lando has done to bounce back after the heartbreak of Zandvoort, which left him 34 points adrift in the title, is simply incredible. I was very critical of Lando, as many of you will know, in 2024 because I honestly felt that the championship should have been a lot closer than it ended up being given the car that Lando had. However, I am also someone who gives people credit when they deserve it, and what he has done recently to wrestle back that momentum, overhaul that points deficit, and crush Oscar mentally has been championship worthy in my opinion. In a way, I think it's poetic that at the very race that Lando last year lost the title, this year in Las Vegas, he can also end Max's title hopes by putting him beyond that 50 points with just 2 races to go after Vegas. In terms of Oscar, there is no doubt that this weekend he was a lot closer to Lando compared to Austin and Mexico, but closer is not enough if he still wants to be in a title fight come Abu Dhabi. The crash in the sprint was just bizarre because he wasn't actually pushing the curb more than some of the other cars around him, but there is the irony that given his recent struggles that it was him that crashed out. Whether it was a lack of concentration or just the pressure which prevented him from being able to react fast enough and potentially hold on to that slide, we'll never know. But this is now not the same Oscar mentally who was faster and outperforming Lando even as recently as the mid-portion of the season. For much of this year, it really felt like even when Lando was winning, that Oscar was still the faster driver. In Silverstone, it was Oscar's penalty that gave Lando the win, and then in Hungary when Lando was behind Oscar, he had nothing to lose and so was able to do the one-stop which inadvertently turned out to be the race-winning strategy. That could have been a run of 4 successive wins for Oscar Piastri, but it wasn't. And since Zandvoort, there is no question as to who has been the faster, better, and mentally stronger driver. This will be a video at the end of the season for when the championship is officially done, but this has been a bottle job by Oscar Piastri so far, given the car that he has had and the advantage that he had over Lando, not just in terms of points, but just pure pace during the mid-portion of the season. Having said that, nothing is over until it's over. Going into Las Vegas, that is a track that should favour the Mercedes and Red Bull a lot more, which in a way might be good for Oscar, because as the driver who is chasing, he needs to stop the momentum and the bleeding against Lando, and maybe Las Vegas will unsettle Lando a little bit. Sometimes it's good for your teammate to experience some chaos and unpredictability out of position, because as the driver who is leading the championship, they have a lot more to lose and a lot more pressure to not drop more points. Looking back at last year, even though Lando outqualified and beat Oscar, the gap in qualifying was just 0.025 seconds, and even in the race they finished right next to each other. That should give Oscar maybe at least some hope going into the weekend that this might not be Lando's strongest track, and if he is improved over last year then theoretically he should be able to outqualify him. So far this season, outside of penalties and different strategies, qualifying has been the single biggest deciding factor as to which of the McLaren drivers finishes ahead of the other. Races like Spa and Singapore, for example, remain a bit of an outlier, because with 2 drivers in the exact same car whose pace is almost identical, there often isn't enough of a delta for one to overtake the other, even if they are faster than the driver ahead. The bedrock of Oscar's collapse and Lando's comeback has been their recent qualifying form, which overwhelmingly has been in Lando's favour. If Oscar can't mentally shake off the injustice of the penalty in Brazil, and if he can't capitalise on the unpredictability of Las Vegas to outqualify Lando and wrestle back at least some of the momentum and positivity, I don't really see any way that he's going to be able to shake Lando's confidence to overturn the title anymore. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.